So good morning, and thank you for joining me for the Lithium Power International Investor Webinar. The company has today released an announcement on the new national lithium policy in Chile. To discuss today's release, I am joined by our chairman, David Hannan, and our CEO, Cristobal Garcia Hudibro. To ask a question throughout today's webinar, please use the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. David, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Jane. And welcome to all our shareholders and interested parties. It's quite a well-attended seminar that we have here, lots of attendees. So, what a sentence that President Boric let it off on Friday, nationalising the lithium industry in Chile. Then, all his statements were much in line with what we expected. But what did the papers lead off with? Nationalising the industry. And everyone ran with that. SQM down 20%-ish, Albemarle down 10%-ish, and the skids in the lithium market, nearly 6 billion of market cap, wiped off on Friday night. Everyone horrified by what he had to say in that leading sentence. If that sentence wasn't there, the rest of it was much in line with what was expected. Anyone that knows the sector over there knows that SQM's leases were to expire in 2030. Albemarle, a decade later. So not too much really in the detail was a surprise, but the skids went into the market. So now we've had time to digest it. The mining minister on Friday night has made many addresses and perhaps has calmed the market. So we now come to Lithium Power. Lithium Power welcomes the new national lithium policy. Our leases are owned by Lithium Power. The Maricunga MSB is very well positioned. We've sort of been handcuffed for many months, not being able to talk about what we expected would happen because we've been in negotiations with the government. We've been in negotiations with Codelco that have the CO over our leases for stage 2 of our project. We've had interested parties, public information, that we're looking for partners and finances, etc., financiers, and they are all have been waiting for the new national lithium policy to be released. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed. Now it's out, and that opens the way for us to move forward. We can get on with stage 1. We can get on with furthering our discussions or negotiations with all the things that we want to do to go forward. So we welcome this new information that we have to talk to our interested parties and get on with the task that we have before us. So I don't want to steal all of Cristobal's thunder here. The announcement that we released this morning really does give a point form summary of what we've got ahead of us and the positive moves and how we can get on with stage 1 and get into production with 16,000 tonnes per annum sooner rather than later. The next couple of years are very exciting for LPI and our MSB and Araceli Blanco project over in Chile. So I'll hand over to Cristobal Garcia, as we fondly call him, and he's going to tell you what it all means and all the positive things that actually have happened over the weekend with the clarification of some of the statements by the mining minister over the weekend for us. Cristobal.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Morning, everyone there. It's pretty late here in Chile. And just to continue with what Dave just said, this policy was the result of long months of work by the government with the private sector, with a lot of stakeholders nationally and internationally. And we really think it was a good outcome at the end, because it will let the state-owned companies now to take the necessary decisions to move forward with the different projects in which they were being involved. And one of those is actually ours. Remember, we have on our assets, we have 2 groups of assets. Our stage 1 project, which I will speak about that in a minute, is fully based on our old code concessions, those that were registered before 1979, when the lithium was declared a strategic material here in Chile. The other half of our concessions are the new code concessions, where we expect now more than ever to be able to develop, the expansion of Maricunga. But let me go straight to some very important points, because there have been a lot of misreadings about what about this announcement made by President Boric on Thursday. The first thing is our stage 1 project is a fully permitted project, and those permits, which are the environmental permit, which is by far the most important permit for a project here in Chile, and specifically on the lithium side for the SICHEM permit that allows you to export lithium products from Chile. Those two permits were granted by the government to us. So it's the same government that is now issuing this policy. Those permits are not at risk at all. Those are two very, very, very different things. And those permits will let us to really now move forward and hopefully start the construction before the end of this year. The second thing is, as you saw, a lot of the attention on this new policy was given to the communities, which, as you all know also, have been one of the bases for our development. We are today like the best example that explains what this new policy wants for the projects in the future. We have the communities, we have been working with them since day one. They will be part of all the benefits this project will be generating for, or during the future years. Now, MSB, and let me be very clear with these next two things. First, MSB is the owner of its mining concessions. So it's very, very different than what the situation of the operators in Atacama is today. We are the owners of our mining concessions. Those are not leases. Those are not subject to any contract renewal in the future or ever. While we pay our annual patents, those mining concessions will be and will remain an asset of this company, okay? Very different the situation in Atacama, where SQM and Albemarle has these leases. In the case of SQM, that lease will be due in 2030, so it's very near now, and they need to renew those leases. In the case of Atacama, the state is the owner of the mining concessions, which is why most of this policy have been really focused on Atacama and what will happen there. It's by far, of course, the main operation we have in Chile. Now, it's very natural that the government now wants to take a more active role and involvement on what's going on and will happen in Atacama, okay? But that's a very, very important thing to understand. The second thing is, I'm pretty sure everyone have hear about this special lithium operation contracts or SEALs. The SEAL is a contract between two parties. The SEAL does not grant any right or ownership over the area that considers, okay? That means that, and this is something that is explicitly written on those SEALs, that in order for the holder of the SEAL to be able to do anything, and I mean exploration, exploitation, even enter those areas, they need an agreement with the owner of the mining concessions. So in this case, is LPI. Now, what's the good news on this is that on LPI, we really embrace the possibilities now that this new policy will generate, because it gives more certainty for the holders of these SEALs. In our case, in the case of Maricunga, is Coelco, to be able to move forward with a clear mandate from the Chilean government, which in our case, we really expect that that can accelerate the development of a future stage 2 in Maricunga, with all the benefits that implies. And just to end, something that we really wanted to include here, because no one really, speak about this. Chile and Australia has a free trade agreement since 2009. And also both countries adhere to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, some months ago. Those two agreements not only, have a very positive impact on what will be the future of both the stage 1 for lithium power and also a future stage 2, but also both of them has very, very clear mechanisms as to protect the international investment in the country. And that's a very important point. Everyone knows that. And we feel really confident that those mechanisms will work if those are needed in the future, but we're pretty sure those are not, that won't be the case. Just to end, we have been working very closely with the Chilean government during the last months, not only on this policy, but also on the possibilities that the stage 1 will imply. Not only because it will add more production for the country, lithium production, I mean, because if you compare this with the size of the Atacama Salar, might not be very significant, but it's really important for the government today, because it will show that the lithium projects can be developed in Chile. They want for this to be the first real example under these private-public alliances and under these new parameters of the policy. So for them, it has a more strategic value than what everyone thinks. So having said that, Jane, I pass the mic to you. So any question?
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And again, you can use the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions. Christopher, we've had a couple, so let me jump into them. And I know you did touch on this earlier, but so what does this mean for the stage 1 development?
Actually, the policy does not really touch the stage 1. Stage 1 is a 99% focus on those mining concessions that today are under the control of the state. Okay, the stage 1 is based on old code concessions. Those were registered before lithium was declared a strategic material in the country, which means that we don't need a CO in order to be able to exploit those stage 1 concessions. So as of today, this project has all the necessary permits that will let us start the construction as soon as we close the financing process for the project.
Thanks, Christabel. So even with the media reports being overblown, do you think large financiers will be deterred from investing in Chile? And do you expect any potential delays with financing?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I really think that they will continue being very interested on the project and in the country. We have seen that interest during the last months on all the work that we have been doing with different international financial institutions on the side of debt, potential, off-takers for our future production, and also, some interested strategic names that really wants to get into also the ownership of this project as potential partners in the future. Now, we will see during the next days. As I said at the beginning, there have been a lot of misreadings about this policy, and I think things will, be, or people will be able to understand better what the president really wanted to say. All the ministers of the government have been out on the press during the last 40 or 24 hours here in Chile. I think the most important one was the finance minister just 2 or 3 hours ago, where he said, please, the president never said anything about control. Really, what he was, referring to was, to Atacama in that case. But this is really something positive for the country, because we really want to, accelerate the development of the industry.
Thank you, Cristobal. Another one. So now that the Chilean issue has been clarified, what are the milestones for the next 12 months? I think in particular, the final investment decision and the demerger of the WA assets and subsequent IPO, actually, in fact.
Yeah, I will speak about the first part of that question. Then I will pass the mic to Andy Phillips to speak a little bit about where we are in Western Australia. With regard to Maricunga, we're fully working on the financing and structuring of the process of the project. As I said, we are working with, the most important international financial institutions, big teams, evaluating the project. So that will be our focus for the next months. We really expect to be able, because this was a process that we started formally by the beginning of the year. So we really expect to have that process closed before year end, and immediately after to start the construction of the stage 1 project. Now, with regard to Western Australia, Andy, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, so WA, we are working on the prospectus and a notice of meeting for that. It's the bare bones of that. We have done some work, as we all know, in WA the last quarter, and we're, as we know, are the biggest landholder in the Greenbushes area. With the market how it is, the capital markets how it is, we have decided to wait till H2 of this year to make sure, to then decide when to go ahead, because the market has been so volatile. Our advisors were just hold off till the second half of the year, but we are working towards that process still. We've got a number of people who are going to be cornerstone investors, who are named people involved in the industry, and so it's a positive thing in WA, but really it's a matter of the markets, and obviously our focus as a board has been on the lithium program of policy in Chile. So that has been our main focus for the first half of this year, but we're still keeping going the WA process as well. And I said the bare bones of the prospectus, the geological reports and those kind of things have all been done, but it's now just not on hold, but certainly delayed slightly until the market is in the right frame of mind to have a new IPO in lithium in WA.
In that there's been some sexy spots in the market. The IPO market certainly has not been a favoured sector. I'll just go to something Cristobal mentioned there, that there's been some articles over the weekend. We have a Twitter account and an Instagram account that is very active in Chile. We've implemented that now in Australia, and when there are some appropriate articles, which now are becoming quite prolific in Chile, we are going to put them on those platforms, and we're going to not only put them in Spanish, we're going to have a mechanism where they are already translated, and we'll put the appropriate ones in English, because we've run into some issues with the ASX on their rules and regulations, where we thought they were particularly appropriate and very applicable to put on the ASX platform, and we're not allowed to do that. But they say that we can do it on these platforms, so we'll be using social media. If they allow us to put it on the ASX platform, we will readily do that. But we ran into some obstacles in recent times that they think because it's country specific, they're not allowing us to put it via that mechanism. So I encourage everyone to join those social media platforms, because that's where we will be posting things on a more frequent basis than via the ASX.
Thank you for that, Dave. And just even further to that, we do have an email subscription which you can log on via our company website for further updates. Gentlemen, I think that's all the questions we have that have come through. Dave, did you want any closing statements?
Yeah. So I want to reiterate what I did say earlier. Many of the things that we've had in place, we've had our hands tied, and that is progressing as quickly as we wanted to potential offtake partners, financing partners, or joint venture partners has been put on not hold, but on the back burner because of the National Lithium Policy and the delay in its release. Now it's released, make no mistake, all those things will be in train from today onwards. So we have meetings as currently as tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to not reinstigate, but to proceed on all those fronts. So the policy is out, everyone knows the information, and people will continue talking to us. In fact, in Chile over the weekend, shall we say, our Chilean board members were very active on meetings with government, with Codelco, and with potential off-takers. So it's on again. So we look forward to exciting times for LPI and MSB. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Yes, and thank you everybody for joining us today. If we've missed any of your questions, please feel free to reach out by the contact details, which can be found at the bottom of our ASX releases. But thanks again for your time.